All right, John. I'm sat here with Johnny Others. Really lovely to meet you. Really enjoying being here and witnessing some wonderful creative byplay and really the creative process. And it's been a fascinating journey so far. This fourth album is a real cracker. I mean, it's I know I'm bound to say that, but I don't actually mean it from the heart. I think there's songs on here that I think are the best thing you've ever done. And that's really important for people, obviously, at this time as well. You know, music really helps lift people at difficult times. With this album, you come into it, been in preparation. Have you done a lot of the music like on the spot now, or has it been in your head and rehearsed kind of virtually, perhaps during the pandemic? What's the background to this album, and what are you hoping to sort of achieve and put out there with it?
Well, there were 4 songs that were pretty old that we'd written before when, I think we played all of them at the last gig we played, which I think may have been 2018 or 2017, whenever the Water Rats was. We'd played 4 of the songs that you've heard, so the most complete 4 are the ones that that we played before. I just need to see what the ones that we've written on the spot. You've been there for all of them. But it was quite interesting to do that because a lot of the really early stuff was kind of written like that, so you kind of saw the process from the really early days and from the first album with those. Then obviously Dom wrote some with Steph and wrote some with Steve, so they were kind of we did go through some of Steph's songs before, but for me and Jimmy, the ones that he'd done with Steve and Eddie, this was the first time that we'd all been in a room for those. So it was just a matter of either adding something or not as appropriate to those, really. And in terms of what you're trying to achieve, just record some new songs. I don't think there's a master plan of a particular sound. I think with the songs are coming from such varied sources that I think it would be quite hard. I mean, I like the idea of putting an album together that is of a type, but I think this one is almost kind of like a compilation album of nothing that's been released.
Yeah, it's almost like a new band in a way. I hate to say that, but it's got such a different variety of colours, soundscapes. It's a real mix. You've also got an unusual thing these days, which is a few songs that are quite topical as well, quite political.
Not unusual for us, is it?
No, but it's great to hear it.
Unusual for these days because we're still active in these days.
Yeah.
I think Dom's always been pretty topical with what he's written.
Yeah. I think that also moving forward with your keyboard player and with a lot of the influences coming in, what would you say the sound is going to be moving forward? Is it going to be more away from the original guitar sound, or are you going to really sort of broaden it into sort of other genres, or do you see it more just complementing what you've already done?
I think it just depends on how they're written. I mean, I don't, as I said before, it's I like the idea of creating almost a conceptual album which is of a type, but that's never been something that we've done, and I don't know if people would really be on board with a vision of what an album is going to be. I mean, it depends. It's if there are more keyboard songs that are good that we'll like, then there'll be a bit more keyboard. If there's more stuff that Jimmy or I write with Dominic, then there'll be more of that. I mean, it might be a nice. I don't think it's not something we've discussed. So it might be
very natural,
a nice idea to think about it. I think it would be a good idea to do something like that at some point. I don't know that it will be. I mean, it won't be this album, and it might not be the next one. But it might be at some point in the future we might do that.
Because there's tremendous power in the playing at the moment and real collective unity as well. I mean, in terms of recording for the album, have you got sort of any plans on when that's going to be, actually laying it down properly, and also producer and things like that? Is it all sort of going to be in the summer, do you think?
I think we were talking about doing some recording in February or March. I think it depends on schedules, really. And it depends what happens with the continuing pandemic as to kind of when it's actually possible to do a thing like that.
Yeah.
I mean, producer-wise, we wouldn't be able to afford a big-name producer, so I think it would probably be like self-produced, or
better that way.
Maybe Joe might know someone that we might do something with. But again, I mean, in a way, I don't know if you were here, but like, you know, because some of these songs are, it's like the first time that they've come together in a room with these people. So some of that production work has already taken place. So for Rights, for example, with the kind of, were you there for like where it changed?
Yes.
And it was kind of like it's quite a stark change. So I mean, that's what a producer does.
Yes.
Try it like this, do that. I mean, that's kind of, so that's kind of happened. That's kind of probably part of what this week was about. Is just kind of creating structure and trying out different things, which is what a producer. But also because not everyone was involved in the writing, and of all of them, you have that ability that people can come in fresh, with kind of fresh ears and an outside, like an outside view on it, which is what you would get with a producer, because obviously you're not close to the songs. So some of these songs you don't have that closeness to, so you can actually go do it like this and see how that goes.
It's got quite a large lineup as well.
Yeah.
And distinct personalities bringing different ideas and influences to the table. And Dominic is such a charismatic figure, and he's so honest and believes in what he's doing and his vision. Do you feel that he's been misunderstood in the past somewhat, because he's such a eclectically honest, eloquent? That's very rare these days, particularly in the music industry, ironically, which is where we're all looking for it. I mean, I certainly think this album in some ways could break you through to a larger audience, actually. How do you feel how the sessions have gone, and do you feel that way as well? I mean, it does seem like a particularly strong set of songs.
There's quite a lot of questions there. In terms of Dom being misunderstood, in what way do you think he's been misunderstood? Because I mean, by the fact that he has been honest, means that
very
people
unusual.
are going to have
judgments
about him. So there's, I mean,
like the Joe Strummer.
Like, I think you can misunderstand someone who is not so honest, but I think if you're, I don't think it's been misunderstood, but I think it's kind of divided people. But
perhaps I
it
used the
doesn't
wrong word.
necessarily mean he's been misunderstood.
No. Exactly.
So do I think it will break us through to a wider audience? I think it depends on who gets to hear it, really, and how, because obviously a wider audience can only be turned onto something if they can hear it. So it's in terms of actually putting that music in a space in which that audience can hear it. I don't know how you would do that.
I mean, at the moment, I guess there's Jules Holland in terms of, Okay,
well, I mean, we never did Jules Holland even when we were at the height of our fame, which, so I kind of think it's unlikely we'll be
Do
invited
it
to
now.
appear on Jules Holland like 20 years later.
There's not much out there, I guess, is what I'm saying, in terms of like the mainstream for bands to go on. But there's so much choices now, internet-wise, that I guess that's a way of getting it out there.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of, I don't listen to a lot of
Six music.
I don't listen to the radio at all. So I genuinely it's not that I don't like music, but I don't have a hunger to find more new music, like newly created music. I kind of do. I get quite interested in finding music that's new to me that isn't necessarily newly created. I quite like a lot of exotica stuff. Like I quite like the tiki bar culture, and that.
Oh my god, and a power cut.
The tiki bar, was that meant to happen? I can't remember why.
It's odd.
That was a bit odd, isn't it?
Have a power cut during an
interview. So yeah, I don't listen to the radio, so I don't really know in terms of new bands and new music. I don't. It's not something that's really on my radar, but I do listen to a lot of. I listen to a lot of new music from bands I like already. I listen to music that's new to me. A lot of kind of music from shows. A lot of kind of like cabaret. I listen to a lot of like as I said, like tiki culture, where you have like that kind of like weird world music and stuff. I really like music that kind of transports you and creates a different sort of sense of space and a different location that kind of takes you out of where you are. So that's
like
kind
escapism.
of, yeah. So in terms of like new music and finding that and how new people are likely to find it, so I wouldn't be able to comment on that at all. Really, I have no idea.
Well, influences, I mean, I don't know if you like to talk about influences at all, because some artists don't like that, so it's up to you, really. But yeah, I mean, I would love to, because I'm a bit of a, muso, and I love talking about bands from years ago.
Okay.
I love discovering new music, but, I mean, do you want to talk about any of your influences at all? What got you into music? What influences you're hearing on the record at the moment, or anything like that?
Okay, so when I was getting into music, it was the stuff that was kind of everywhere was grunge, and I didn't like grunge. And because I didn't like grunge, that's actually kind of where I found a lot of the 80s stuff, because I looked back to what was before. That's about it. No. So how I found out a lot of 80s stuff was literally I was a lack of anything that I liked that was available to listen to. So one of the earliest things I got, it was a collection of the Bunnymen songs, and I think it was like a real cheap like cassette called The Cutter. No, it wasn't like the official one. It was like a cheapy kind of rip-off one. I think it was called The Cutter, and I think it was like. And it wasn't just singles. It wasn't like even all the singles. It was quite short, but it was a nice collection of stuff. So kind of the Bunnymen and the Mary Chain, Sisters of Mercy, all of that stuff was because I mean I guess if you kind of think of when grunge was, and it's like the Sisters of Mercy were actually still a chart hitting band at that point with things like Temple of Love and stuff. They were pretty popular still kind of like quite a big audience. So that was my kind of gateway to a lot of music that I did end up liking. Was kind of just a disinterest in
what was going on at the time.
New, and then obviously there was Britpop, and actually the kind of the new wave was kind of quite a good thing for me to kind of go back, because it's weird because I've always kind of been quite anti-American music. Quite a lot of American music, so it doesn't really appeal. But the so bands like These Animal Men and Elastica that were kind of came out then, and Suede weren't new wave, but that kind of thing, that was kind of like how that was like my first foray into kind of the newer music. That was like what was going on at the time by that point. So so there was all of that, and then
because Elastica got sued by the Stranglers, didn't they? They were like a female Stranglers.
But,
they were great fun.
You can see that connection.
What I
did there with between those bands and what I was listening to before. And I think there was a lot of rubbish in Britpop, but there was some really, really good bands. Marion, I love Marion. I like Manson a lot. And then I kind of liked some of the more, like the less. I mean, I don't dislike Blur, but I never loved Blur. I never loved Oasis, and never loved Blur. But I liked at that point like a band called David Devon and Spirit Wife.
Oh, I remember them. I had some of their records.
Loved David Devon and Spirit Wife.
They do a really kind of amazing, imaginative, like theatrical, like cross between prog and goth, almost like visual.
Yeah,
they have amazing.
Yeah, perfect. I was like, that's absolutely my bag. It was a band called Minty that were a bit later, that were Lee Barrow's performance art thing. So kind of that's like in terms of there was like new wave, and then there was the kind of more left field music that came out during that sort of time. But one of the first kind of new gigs that I saw was Carter, supported by These Animal Men, which was like blew me away. It was so good. But I think it was like maybe 94 or something like that. But yeah, These Animal Men were supporting Carter on tour, and like they were the first. I'd seen the Mission previously to that. Like they'd done a warm-up show, and they blew me away because obviously they had been like 2 or 3 years earlier. They'd been playing stadiums, and this was a little warm-up show in like a pretty tiny room in Brighton. And I'd kind of gone just like I wasn't like that aware of them. I'd gone out of curiosity, and it was amazing because it was this tiny room and it sounded huge in this tiny room, and you could kind of tell that they played stadiums just because they had this incredible stage presence. So you had that they had like a big sound and just a big kind of something on stage. But then, like as I said, we're kind of stripping it down, like These Animal Men and Carter, where they had the eye line and they would look into the audience, and that's kind of when we first started doing it. So it's like I would always like pick people to look at in the like actually, so you have that eye contact, because that was kind of like quite a it was like like you can make a real kind of connection, I think.
Well, connection is interesting because in a sense you're quite unusual. We're a bit kindred spirits, because at the time I used to get a bit infuriated. A lot of that Britpop crowd never sort of would talk about the previous bands from like only 10 years earlier. It could have been 20 years ago with some of them, the way they talked, and it was always weird because Weller and that came back. So people like the Mission, or as you talked about then, they were sort of sometimes a bit shunned, and I could see the connections, and there were the odd enlightened person, but there weren't that many around. So it's quite interesting to hear that.
No, well, when I saw the Bishop was a warm-up gig, I think it was only like probably 300 capacity, and it's you imagine, you know what kind of the sort of venues they were filling before that, but it was kind of like when they then did their proper show, it wasn't like that big. It was like the Astoria or something like that. You know, it was that kind of so they'd kind of come down in terms of popularity, but it was good to see a band that had that live experience on that scale, because you could tell, even though it was in a tiny room, you could tell that they had that. Like they were still that. Do you know what I mean? And it's like I'm not like a mad Mission fan, but it was like it was just an impressive experience to kind of to have as that sort of that kind of pomposity on that small scale.
Yeah,
small
being up
scale
close.
Pomposity.
Yeah, small scale pomposity. I mean, I remember one of the concerts I went to, which is probably the worst concert I've been to in my life, in a sense, was I got given a ticket to go to see Pop Mart with U2, and even though I love U2's early stuff and everything, it was so terribly impersonal because it was so huge that I just, that lack of the connection from a band that's had such a connection with their songs, such a human connection, it seems such an anomaly to me. So it's lovely to be closer to people like that, because they can get too big and or too.
I've not really seen many stadium gigs, to be honest. It's like,
No, nor have I.
I can't imagine it would be that great an experience. I think I saw the Brighton Centre. So it's like about probably.
It's where the Jam played their last gig, I think. One of their last.
I think it's about 2,000 capacity, and I saw like things like Chemical Brothers there, which was good, and. But that's not stadium, is it? It's kind of still quite small scale.
Yeah, because around the Britpop time, I was at uni in Bournemouth. Used to go to a place called the Old Fire Station, and that's where I saw David Devant.
Or it's still been brought into use again. Yeah,
didn't know that. Because that's where I saw David Devant. There used to be every week a fantastic Britpop band would come, and it'd be as small as this, and you'd be right up close on them with Steve Craddock, Ocean Colours, all these different groups. Sub Circus, who are a bit like Radiohead, and all these various people. I mean, it's like, I guess in the last 20 years, sort of the emphases have changed such a lot, haven't they, with technology and gaming and other things distracting from music. It's like, and now with the pandemic and everything else, I thought it was ironic watching you on the beach. We had the masks on. It's almost as if artistic, expression is almost being muzzled in a sense, just without even trying. Less bands around, less, and that's where the rich vein of form on this album. It's such a consistent album in such a difficult time that I personally think it's a real jewel. There's a few songs on there as well, that one with lyrics about phones pings and NHS app and that, and there's another one about paranoia that could be about now, that's a bit older. It is. Which are your favourite songs on there? And how in terms of relating to them, would you agree with some of my summaries there, or anything you'd want to add on that?
I like that there are new songs. I think it's hard to kind of judge. I think I would probably get because you can have favourites that are in this room, that when you record them, they kind of miss something. So I like. I think there's something about the atmosphere that you get in a room like this that's quite hard to transfer to a record, like a produced record, a properly recorded record, because it is far more. So in terms of my favourites, I think I would want to wait until the album was recorded, and I remember a couple of tracks in previous albums when I've been on guitar and I've been saying to the producer, make it sound more shit, make it sound worse, because there were some songs which were kind of deliberately kind of dumb songs, and I wanted it to sound basically like someone that could barely play, that was in their mum's garage at home, because I think you've got there's, while obviously technical musicianship is beneficial in some ways, it's when you're the way you look at things when you're a child compared to the way you look at things when you're an adult, your perception changes. And I think while someone who's a very technical player can find that there's kind of there's nothing that actually moves them, but actually if you hear something and it sounds like a very lo-fi sound, it sounds kind of almost amateurish, is actually kind of more of a charm about that than something that's very, very sort of sophisticated. So
that was 60s records where it's such a great record, and you hear a little mistake and you just smile because it's part of it.
Yeah, so I'll kind of just wait and see how it all develops.
Yeah.
I think it's still kind of early days before, because they're still quite fresh, aren't they?
Yeah.
The songs, so it'd be interesting to see how they develop. I wouldn't say a favourite yet, really.
No, I mean, as I say, sometimes an influences is always subjective, because you sort of, to somebody listening, it can sound like something totally different to what the writer thinks anyway was done. Sometimes it can be correct. Music's so infinite, there might be a connection that neither of you bloody know about. It sounds like, you know what I mean? It's like music now is so readily available, particularly from the past, that someone can say, "Oh, they sound just like whatever," and they probably never even heard them. I mean, going back to influences and also broadening the sound, I mean, obviously you haven't mentioned Radiohead, or going back also to previous era of electronica, people like the Banshees, or more on the electronica side, people like, I guess, Human League and all this that I used to listen to back then. What were your sort of favourite groups from those sorts of eras when you were growing up that got you to pick up a guitar in the first place, or a keyboard? What was sort of your favourite?
Well, as I said, but like when I was getting into music, it was a while after the era of music I was listening to. But yeah. I would kind of probably say, in terms of picking up a bass guitar, was probably Sisters. Like some of the early Sisters records, and the bass guitar on that was and I would say I like the sound of the bass on Elastica records. So I would kind of probably say Sisters of Mercy and Elastica as a kind of thing for picking up a bass guitar. I was trying to think about this the other day, in terms of an actual guitar. I think I've had an actual guitar for quite a long time, but I've never played that much.
Yeah, I'm the same in a way.
So I'm not very musery, I'm afraid.
No, that's good. I encourage that. I mean, that's one of the messages of the others, in a way, in that the structural structure and the musicality of the band is as intricate as any muso band out there. But there's a sort of democracy and an openness to the band that I adore, that seems to be encompass not only different influences but different types of people, alienated people in the lyrics. There's so much sociologically, politically in there as well, that it's a really positive sort of eclectic mix moving forward. I just hope that it gets you out there, and obviously at the moment, yeah, well, you out there,
the house.
Exactly. Well, what I mean by that is, obviously, with not so much touring going on because of COVID, and not much profit from music if you don't tour, it's a bit of a difficult prospect, isn't it? I guess at the moment. So let's hope things pick up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that. I think, you know, we did well enough at the time to have a base of people that will come and see us. Like, you know, we could be playing occasional gigs for years, like a lot of like the new wave bands or punk bands. Like I kind of think we kind of have enough of a following to be able to do that, which is quite nice. To be able to kind of just say, okay, we're going to do a gig and have, you know, a full room of people, because a lot of bands don't even get that. So I think it's kind of it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I mean, a question that I think, because we're coming to the end now, is that a lot of the times if you Google Dom and you talk about the others or whatever, there'll be an association with the Libertines, which is quite funny, because, you know, I personally think that you can not be a Libertines fan and like the others. You can be someone who isn't into the Libertines and like the others. And sometimes it's like the Blue Oasis thing, or bands that are associated, or if somebody says, oh, they're like something, sometimes it can put people off that band, or they can get the wrong idea.
I don't think we're anything like the Libertines. I wouldn't want to be, to be honest. So I appreciate that.
I don't see the connection, really.
Well, the connection is that we played with them a lot, and there was apparently a scene which certainly I was never part of, but in terms of, I don't think there's anything. I think there's no similarities with the music at all.
No, I didn't think so.
So yeah, I mean,
you have more depth and broadness scope. You know, I only bring it up because it's like an association, and it was just curious. But it is a lovely album, and it's been an absolute pleasure chatting. It really, really has. I've been interested in stripping back some of your influences and talking, and I think moving forward, I'll be delighted to see it get a wider, huge audience. It's been lovely to be here. But look, I'll let you get back to recording.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Lovely chatting. God bless.
Yeah.
Bye.